He held her hand. He walked her down the path like he loved her. She trusted him with every step. He took her to the river. He told her to pray. And then he pushed her in. For $90 million. What he did not know was that she already knew what he was going to do. She knew. She had known for days. And by the time she came back from that water, he was already finished. Her name was Amara. In her language, Amara means grace. And she lived that name every single day. She had been blind since she was 7 years old. A bad fever came during the dry season and took the light from her eyes. Just like that. Gone. But it did not destroy her. It made her stronger. She learned to feel the world with her hands. She knew every pot in her kitchen by touch. She knew every basket by its weight. She could hear someone walking toward her compound and tell you who it was before they even arrived. She knew her house by steps. 12 steps from the door to the grinding stone. 8 steps from there to the water jar. 4 steps from the water jar to the fire. She moved around her world like blindness was just another way of living. And her village loved her for it. The old women called her the daughter of patience. Children sat with her and listened to her stories. Stories about rivers that remembered the names of people who drowned. Stories about the sky keeping records of every wrong thing done under it. She was not the kind of woman who went to school. But she understood people deeply. She knew when someone was lying just by listening to how they breathed. She knew when a hand was holding hers with love. And she knew when it was holding hers with something else. His name was Kofi. Kofi was a man people respected in the village. Tall. Well-dressed. He always had something to say at meetings. He kept his shoes clean even on ordinary days. He married Amara 8 years before this story begins. And at first, the marriage looked good. He walked her to church on Sundays. He introduced her to people with what sounded like pride. He bought her a radio so she could hear the world outside their home. And Amara, she loved him with everything. No conditions. No limits. She loved him even when he came home late smelling of places he never mentioned. She loved him past all his faults. Every morning she tied his shoelaces. Not because he needed help, but because her fingers knew that knot, and doing it made her feel close to him. When he was angry, she laughed softly until he stopped being angry. When people in the village said Kofi was selfish, that he borrowed things and never returned them, Amara always spoke up for him. He is a good man, she would say. Good men carry heavy things without saying a word. People believed her because she said it with so much certainty. They tried to believe her. It happened on a Tuesday. 2 white government trucks came down the main road. Men in clean suits came out. Then the megaphones started. The government was building something big. A dam. Roads. A power station. They needed land. A lot of land. Land in the river valley. Land where people had lived for generations. And the families whose land would be taken would be paid. The man with the paper read out the number. $90 million. The crowd went completely quiet. Then people started shouting. Women held their children tight. Old men looked at each other like they could not believe what they were hearing. And Kofi went very still. He stood there with his jaw tight, his eyes moving like someone adding up numbers in his head. Calculating. Planning. Because the land the government wanted, belonged to Amara's family. Her father had owned it. When her father died, it passed to her. Her name was on the papers. Which meant the money was hers. Amara stood beside him with her hand on his arm. Her face turned up slightly the way she always did when she was listening carefully. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, low enough that only Kofi could hear, "Money is the truest test of a man's heart." Kofi said nothing. But something changed in him right there. She felt it. The arm under her hand went stiff. The way a body goes stiff when a thought comes that a person is not ready to say out loud. It started small. Like how fruit rots on the inside first, where you cannot see it, until one day it is completely bad. The week after the announcement, Kofi said he was going to look at building materials in the next town. He came back 4 hours later with nothing in his hands and said very little about where he had been. She noticed. She always noticed. Not with her eyes. With the quiet part of her that listened to the space between words. A few days later, he made a phone call outside on the back porch. His voice was low. Almost a whisper. She caught a few pieces before he stopped when he felt her near. If it is in her name, how do I? What if she is not around? He did not finish. He saw her in the doorway, her face turned toward his voice, and he cleared his throat and said he was just talking to a friend about business. She nodded. She said nothing. Later, someone in the village told a story. He did not know who he was really talking about. He said a man had gone to a lawyer in the city. A lawyer who dealt with land and inheritance. The man had asked a simple question. If a wife dies without a will, does the land go to the husband or to her family? The lawyer explained the law. The husband had the first right, unless there were children, unless the family challenged it, unless. The man did not let him finish. What if there are no children? The lawyer said. Then it becomes much simpler. The man who told that story did not know the name of the man who visited the lawyer. But Amara knew. She had no doubt. By the third week, Kofi stopped doing the small things. No hand on her shoulder in the morning. No cup of water left beside her. He was still in the house, but he was far away in his mind. He started going to a woman named Efua almost every evening. Efua sold cloth at the market. She laughed too loud and always asked questions about land prices and government money. She wore expensive things that did not match what she earned. Her eyes were always counting something. A young girl came and told Amara about Efua. She expected Amara to cry. Amara thanked her, gave her water, asked about her mother. The girl left not knowing what to think. Because Amara was already moving quietly on her own. She had asked her cousin to read the compensation documents to her. 3 times over. She had asked him to explain the whole process, what was needed to claim the money, what rights she had, whose signature was required. She remembered all of it. Then one Thursday night, she heard what she needed to hear. She was lying still on the sleeping mat. So still that Kofi thought she was deep asleep. He knelt beside her in the dark and whispered something he had never said out loud before. Words meant only for himself. If she is gone, he whispered, it will all be mine. The room was dark. She could not see his face. But she heard every single word the way only a woman hears who has been listening with her whole body for over 20 years. She did not move. She did not make a sound. She just lay there and breathed slowly. Like still water. Calm on top. Very deep underneath. And in the morning she got up. She tied his shoelaces. She made his tea. She smiled when he spoke. He did not understand the smile. It made him a little uneasy. Like a door he did not remember opening. But he told himself he was just imagining things. A blind woman could not know what she had not been shown. If you believe money should never come before loyalty, drop a like right now. Because what happens next will test everything you believe about right and wrong. On the 23rd morning after the announcement, Kofi came to Amara with a plan. He spoke carefully. Too carefully. She could hear that he had practiced the words. The elders say that when a big blessing comes to a family, you must first go to the river and give thanks. It is our tradition. If we do not, the blessing will go bad. He waited. She was quiet for a while. Then she said, yes. Let us go to the river. He had not expected that. He had prepared himself to talk her into it. He had not prepared for yes coming so quickly and so easily. But he told himself blind women were simple like that. They said yes without thinking. He took her hand. They walked the long bush path to the river. It was late afternoon. The light was orange and the shadows were long. Everything looked like a dream. On normal days, that path was full of birds and insects and the sound of women calling from the market road. But that day the bush was quiet. As they got closer to the water, the birds in the trees above them stopped making noise one by one, like something was telling them to be still. The river itself looked strange. Not the normal slow-moving quiet of afternoon water. This was a different kind of quiet. The kind that comes just before something happens. Kofi felt the hairs on his arms stand up. He ignored them. They stopped at the edge of the water. He put both hands on her shoulders and turned her so she was facing the river. He could see her bare feet touching the wet red clay at the water's edge. "Pray," he said. And she did. She lifted her face up, not toward the sun, which was going down, but higher, like she was talking to something far above everything. She spoke in the old language. Words so old that Kofi only understood pieces. But the pieces he understood made him cold inside. "River, you who remember everything. You who have seen what was done in the dark." She stopped. She turned her head slightly. Not toward him but near him. Like she could feel his eyes on her back. Like she had a sense that had no name. And she said softly, "Whatever happens today, let truth come up." He pushed her. A firm push on her back. Enough to send her forward into the deep water where the current was strongest and the water was darkest. She went in. He watched her fall. He waited for the splash. It did not come. He stared at the river. The water was completely flat. No movement. Like she had simply disappeared. Like the river had opened and taken her in without making a single sound. No rings spreading out. Nothing. He waited 1 minute. Then 2. The river stayed flat and still. He turned and walked back up the path fast. He did not look back. But the river did not take her. The river knew who she was. Under the water, there was light. Not the normal dark green of deep river water. A warm golden light that moved slowly, like something enormous breathing down there. Amara did not fall. She went down slowly, like the water was holding her carefully. Like it knew her. The water did not feel dangerous. It felt like welcome. And then something happened that she was not ready for. Light. Real light. She could see. For the first time in 23 years, she could see. She saw the gold of the water around her. She saw the riverbed far below, smooth pale stones covered in something soft and shining. She saw fish the color of copper and purple moving together like dancers. She saw her own hands in front of her. She had never seen her own hands before. They were brown and strong, the tips of her fingers rough from years of reading the world by touch. She cried. Her tears went into the river and became part of it. Then a voice came. Not like a normal voice. Not from one direction, not from one person. It came from the water, from the light, from everywhere at once. It said, "Daughter of the river, your test is finished." And she understood everything. Her blindness was never a punishment. It was a covering. The river had taken her sight when she was a child not to hurt her, but to make her sharp in other ways. To make her able to see what eyes can never show you. The truth inside people. The truth behind words. The truth of real love. And the truth of what pretends to be love. She had been made ready for this marriage. For this betrayal. For this exact moment. She was made to be the kind of woman who, when someone throws her into deep water, does not drown. She rises. "You are the chosen queen of this river," the voice said. "But your place is not here. It is up there. Among the people you were sent to help." She floated up slowly through the golden water. Until she broke through the surface. And the world took her back. Kofi moved fast. He had already planned this part. He came back to the village that evening with his face broken with grief. He told the elders that Amara had slipped at the river during the Thanksgiving. That he tried to grab her. That the water took her before he could reach her. He said it with tears and shaking hands. Kofi was good at performing. He had always been good at that. The village believed him. Of course they did. A blind woman near a river. It was easy to imagine. A terrible accident. Women brought food. Men came to sit with him. The pastor came and prayed at his door. The funeral was set for Saturday. Many people came. Amara had been loved. People came from nearby villages. Women who had never met her but knew her name. Children who had sat with her. Old people who saw in her the kind of wisdom that only comes from walking through hard things with your head up. Kofi sat in the middle of everything wearing white, receiving people's sympathy like a man carrying a load too heavy for one person. He had already called the compensation office about the money. The pastor opened his Bible. Everyone bowed their heads. The prayer for burial began. And then, from the edge of the crowd, from the direction of the road that leads from the river, a woman walked in. She walked without a stick. Without anyone holding her hand. Without any hesitation at all. She had on a wrapper the color of deep water, dark blue-green with something in it that caught the light. She stood straight. Her shoulders were back. And her eyes were open. The crowd did not understand what they were looking at. Then a child at the back, in the honest voice of a child who has not yet learned what is impossible, said, "That is Amara." The silence after that was the deepest silence that village had ever heard. It was the silence of a whole world stopping. She walked through the crowd. People moved out of her way like water moves for a stone. She walked until she stood in front of Kofi. She stopped. And she looked at him. With eyes that could now see everything. She did not shout at him. She did not cry. She did not call him names, even though everyone around her was already thinking the worst. She just started talking. Calmly. Clearly. The way a woman talks when she is not trying to hurt someone but simply telling what is true. On the Wednesday of the second week after the announcement, my husband went to a lawyer in the city. He asked what happens to land in a wife's name when the wife dies with no children. A sound moved through the crowd. Kofi opened his mouth. Nothing came out. On the Thursday of the third week, while he thought I was sleeping, he knelt beside me in the dark and said these words, "If she is gone, it will all be mine." The sound in the crowd got louder. He told me we were going to the river to give thanks. He stood behind me at the water's edge. And he pushed me in. Everyone turned to look at Kofi. Every single person. The pastor. The elders. The women who brought food. The men who sat with him. The children. All of them looking at him. He felt it. All those eyes at once. There was nowhere to go inside himself. No performance big enough for this moment. His face fell apart. And from deep inside him came words he had not planned to say. Yes. Just that one word. Then more came. Yes. I pushed her. I wanted the money. All of it. I thought if she was gone. He stopped. Not because he had nothing left to say, but because something happened inside his body. His hand went to his chest. His face changed. Not from shame now. From something else. Something physical and final. He fell. No slow fall. No drama. He simply went down the way something falls when nothing is holding it up anymore. He hit the ground. He did not get up. The doctor came and said what the crowd already knew. Kofi was gone. Nobody cried. The sky did not change. No thunder, no sign. Birds kept calling somewhere in the distance. A dog barked near the market. A child coughed. Life just continued. But something very old, very patient, and very powerful had been made right. The money came 40 days later. $90 million. Paid to the only person whose name was on the land. Amara. She sat in the government office with her eyes fully open and signed the papers with the same hand that used to count 12 steps to a grinding stone. She brought in lawyers and accountants. People who knew how to handle big money carefully and honestly. She met with the village council. And then she started building. First, a school. Not a falling down building with broken chalk and leaking roof. A real school. 5 classrooms. A library. A room with computers. Solar power on the roof. Clean water inside. Good teachers who were paid well enough to stay. She did not put her own name on it. She gave it her father's name. The man who gave her the land that made all this possible. Second, a foundation for children with disabilities. She knew what it felt like to live in a world not built for you. She knew that when you cannot do things the normal way, you find other ways. Stronger ways. She knew that what people call a weakness can become the sharpest thing about you. The foundation paid for therapy. For equipment. For trained teachers. It also sent people to the government to say clearly, these children are not a burden. They are the future. Third, a cooperative for widows. Women who had lost their husbands and been left with nothing. Women told in many small ways that nothing was all they deserved. Amara brought them together. She gave them money to start something. She gave them training and a market and someone to stand up for them legally. She gave them back their dignity. Fourth, she made everything open to the public. Every payment posted on the wall. Every contract open to questions. Every year, a meeting where any person in the village could come and ask where the money went. She told the council, wealth is not the problem. Greed is. Greed is just money inside a small heart. The village changed. Slowly at first. Then faster. Then all at once. Children who used to walk far to school now walked minutes. Women who used to hide their poverty now ran businesses and stood tall at the market. Children with disabilities who used to be kept in back rooms now stood on the school stage and said poems in front of their parents. And Amara walked through all of it with open eyes. She saw the red earth. The growing crops. The faces of children who did not yet know how big their lives were going to be. She saw all of it. And she was grateful. Be honest. If you were in Kofi's place, if that land belonged to someone else, if $90 million was one choice away, and you thought nobody would ever find out, would you have chosen loyalty? Or the money? Tell me in the comments. No judgment. Just truth. This is what old people know that young people must learn. The river keeps records. Not in books. Not in offices. Not in the minds of people who can be paid to forget. But in a place older and deeper than all of those things. A place where what you do stays forever, far from any regret or any excuse. Loyalty is not weakness. It is the hardest choice a person can make when leaving would be easy and the reward for leaving is very big. Greed does not make you big. It makes you small. Small enough to be trapped by a number. Small enough to throw away someone who loves you for money. Small enough to push a blind woman into a river and call it smart. And being blind is not always what it looks like. Sometimes the person who cannot see with their eyes is the only one in the room who is truly seeing. Justice is not always noisy. Sometimes it is as quiet as a river taking in a woman who was thrown into it. Sometimes it is as fast as a man falling. Sometimes it is as slow and sure as a school going up brick by brick on land someone tried to steal. The river knows. The river remembers. And what the river chooses to give back, it gives back whole. If this story touched you, if you believe justice always finds its way, type the word justice in the comments right now. And if you want more African folktales like this one, subscribe. Because the next story might go even deeper than this one.